Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here to talk about my favorite fantasy books that I read in 2023. As I said in a previous video, I'm splitting these up by genre, although this year I did not actually have to make a separate list for historical fantasy. I just didn't have as many to talk about, and I'm going to be ranking and talking about my favorite fantasy books that I read. These are not necessarily ones that came out in 2023. Actually, I think only maybe one of them did. I tend to read a lot of backlist. Maybe two of them did. Anyway, so we're going to talk about that. The content warnings will be down below. I will also, of course, link any other videos and people I mention. And yeah, St. Martin's Press boycott is ongoing at the time of this video, so that may also affect things that I talk about or don't talk about. Also, I'm realizing that quite a few of these are indie titles, so that's exciting too. So I have 6 fantasy books to share about. Number 6 is Beauty Reborn by Elizabeth Lowum. This is a very short Beauty and the Beast retelling that I think had a very important and interesting take on the retelling aspect, and I feel like it handled it really well. So this book does deal extensively with sexual assault and the aftermath of that, like the trauma of that, and it's a book about healing while also understanding that this is going to continue to affect you and that that is not your fault. I actually have a whole review on this one because I did receive this as an ARC, and I just feel like the lens that the author used to like tell the story and to like take on the Beauty and the Beast story in this way, I just think is incredibly smart and well done. I think the characterization is also really well done, and I think the central relationship is really beautifully handled, because I think a book that deals with a topic like this, if you're going to have a romantic relationship after that kind of trauma, I think it has to be handled very carefully and with a lot of compassion, and I feel like the author really did that. So I would definitely recommend this one if the topic is something you can handle reading about. Then number 5, I have The Opposite of Magic by Colleen Cowley, and I've said before that like sometimes star ratings don't necessarily correlate to the ranking of my favorites, because I actually gave this one 4.5 stars, but it still feels like a favorite to me. So Colleen Cowley wrote the Subversive series, which is one of my favorites. I think she does romantic fantasy in a way that just really works for me. And so this is a standalone. We're following a young woman who is she's like working as, is it like a TA sort of, or she's like working in research at like a university, and her area of study has always been like magic and kind of like folk tales and that sort of thing, and she's really passionate about it. And then she finds out 2 things that are just very upsetting for her. One of them is that there is magic, but she does not have any. In fact, she has like an impressive amount of like not magic, which is of course devastating to her. And then also the second horrible thing she finds out is that the IT guy that she always butts heads with, he actually does have magical abilities, and so of course they end up getting involved, working together on things. This is a hate to love, and even though it does a couple of things that I don't like with hate to love, like I love that trope, but I'm very picky about it, and there are some elements at the beginning that I find frustrating. But throughout the book, I just found their relationship so well developed, so engaging and interesting and well written. I also just really loved our main characters, and I really liked the sort of normalness of this book. Like it's like magic in academia, and there is some like high intensity plot stuff closer to the end of the book, and I do feel like that was done well as also. But like one of the things that I just really loved is like our characters are just hanging out, which is not always something I enjoy, but here I really did. So I just love this author. Number 4 is, I did kind of a combo. I want to talk about Lady Liesl's Seaside Surprise and Gate Sinister, both of which are by Tansy Rayner Roberts. I just really love her writing. I love her humor. I love the balance of things that she does in her writing, where there's like enough character, there's enough humor, there's enough relationship development. Her writing just really clicks with me, and I really enjoy it. And I also really love the concepts of her books. Lady Liesl's Seaside Surprise is a companion book in her Tea and Sympathetic Magic series. So it's sort of like loosely historical fantasy, but very loose on the historical aspects, and this one also has a sapphic relationship. I also think that the mystery element of this one was really interesting. It's been possibly my favorite in the series so far, definitely one of them. And then Gate Sinister is the first in a new series of novellas, and this is like it's like the last fairy in Britannia. She is undercover as a governess in order to do something that she needs to do to help her like fairy like family or like community, but things get very complicated because she starts getting closer with the family, like the kids that she's taking care of and, you know, tutoring, being the governess for. And yeah, I just thought that was really well done. I love our main character. I love the relationships that she forms. I love the setting and the idea of this book. So yeah, just I really enjoyed Tansy Rayner Roberts as an author. Number 3, I have sort of another actually, I'm realizing a lot of the ones on this list are like technically more than one book, but that's okay. The Fairyland series by Catherine M. Valenti. I'm so happy to host a series of discussions with My Name is Martinez. This is one of her favorite series, and we alternated which channel the like live shows would be on, so I'll link our playlist for that. This was the kickoff to my Not a Genre book club, where we read and discuss middle grade and young adult books with the same kind of detail and sort of like respect that adult books or more like classic books tend to get. And I just really love this series as a whole. It is whimsical, and there are a couple of places in the first 2 books that I think it goes a little like farther than I tend to find like enjoyable, like in terms of the whimsy and the like wackiness. But as a whole, the series is just so beautiful, and like the amount that I loved the 5th book just made up for any complaints I had about other books in the series. I also really enjoyed the 4th book. I actually think the 2nd book is a fantasy book that I talked about really loving the year before. So like just this is a prime like series that's greater than the sum of its parts, because I love the writing. I love the themes about growing up and about love and about like determination. It's just incredibly beautiful. There's so much to discuss with these books. I love the characters. I really love the moments of humor. Blunderbuss the Combat Wombat is like going to be one of my favorite fictional characters forever. Like I adore her. Yeah, and I think that the way that the 5th book pulled things together was absolutely perfect. Like truly one of the best series finales I have ever read. It had the perfect balance of every emotion, every mood. And I just think the way that it the way that it like resolved this kind of like portal fantasy setup, I think is beautiful. And more authors should take note. But yeah, I love this series. Hello everybody, I am jumping in to add a book that I forgot. This is the second time I've had to do this for one of these videos. I don't know if you've seen the other one yet, but I realized I forgot one, and I think once again it was because it was like I was trying to decide which category to put it in, because it's a historical fantasy. This should be in the actual number 3 spot, so it's going to go between the ones that I mentioned were number 3 and number 2. I don't know if that matters to you, but anyway, so I wanted to, of course, talk about The Scandalous Confessions of Lydia Bennet Witch by Melinda Taub. This is a book I really, really loved, so it's extra frustrating that I forgot to talk about it. I will link my full review that I did. I did receive an ARC of this, so I got to review it early, and as probably a lot of you know, I love Melinda Taub. She wrote Still Starcrossed, which is one of my favorite books, and so I was very excited that she had another book coming out after a very long time, and this is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice from Lydia's perspective. And I think it was such a smart retelling. It is so clever, so interesting. I love the way that Melinda Taub like took different elements from the story and made them just like made you like view them differently. It was just really great. I think the characterization of Lydia was very engaging and very endearing. It is a fairly character-focused novel, and it is, like I said, pretty strong on the historical side. So if you're not a fan of historical fiction, I don't know if this is one that would like bridge you into that necessarily, but I thought the characterization was great. I thought the writing style was excellent. I feel like it was very much in that kind of flavor of Jane Austen and of this time period without sounding forced and without like trying to copy too much. I thought the like cleverness of the writing was great. There's a romantic element that I actually was surprised at how well it worked for me, and just the overall story I found just a very clever take on Pride and Prejudice, not just by having Lydia Bennet as the main character, but also having her have this kind of magical ability that she's like trying to figure out while also navigating being a young woman in the Regency era. She definitely feels in line with Lydia from the original novel, but because we get to see her more, because we get to see her in these situations from her perspective, and of course because of like the different elements of the story, I feel like her characterization hits that perfect balance between feeling like it fits in with the novel by Jane Austen, but then also being very much like her own character, being like Melinda Taub's own take on Lydia and on her story. And I mentioned in the review that like I went into this book like with a kind of soft spot for Lydia, or at least like some some sympathy and understanding, because like definitely there are some things she does in the novel, like the original novel, that are incredibly frustrating and selfish, and so I'm not saying that like everything about her is just misunderstood, but I did go into it kind of like ready to be convinced, and I feel like the book did that really well. And I really, really love the relationship between her and Kitty, especially. Like, just the family and friend relationships in general were really well done. Like, all the characterization, I think, was very, like, nuanced and detailed. And I also feel like the way this book touches on different things about the world that Lydia lives in is really interesting, like kind of the very subtle commentary on what it's like to be like a woman in this time and everything. I just think it was really, really well written. I do feel that the sort of like structure, like Lydia as a main character, and also like the way that the story is communicated to the reader, I think can be off-putting to some readers, and I totally understand that. But I feel like Melissa Top really pulled it off. I think it was brilliantly well done. Number 2 is another read-along series that is the Circle of Magic books, and also I'm including the Circle of Magic and also the Circle Opens, which it's the sequel series. Beautiful Bookish Bethany hosted a read-along of both of these series over the year, and I was so happy to be a part of it. Like, this is not this series being on this list is absolutely no surprise if you've been like watching wrap-ups or anything, or any of those live shows, because I have made it very obvious that I love these books and that this is in fact my favorite thing I've read by Tamora Pierce so far. I never got into her when I was like in that age group for whatever reason, but I've been reading her as an adult and loving her books, and these are by far my favorite. Like, the first series follows these 4 kids who are discovered by these like magic tutors, and they're brought to Winding Circle. Like, they're brought to this place of, it's like kind of a community where they will be trained. I love these 4 kids so much. I love the adults in their life and those relationships. The found family vibes of these books are beautiful. I love the handling of these different cultures and these different experiences, and like these books were written a couple decades ago, but like Tamora Pierce does a better job than some authors like writing books now. I just think that the way she handles these topics is really, really thoughtful. Well, also, these are just good stories in themselves. Like, I think it's that perfect balance of books that say something really well and also books that are entertaining and interesting. The character development is beautiful. The like emotional impact of these books is fantastic. They really show the quality that middle grade and young adult books have, and the amazing stories that they tell. I love these books so much. It was really hard to decide if this was going to be ranked number 2 or number 1, but like for now it's number 2, but like I love these so much. And finally, number 1 on my list, and my favorite fantasy book that I read in 2023, is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. I was actually gifted this by my friend at Book Fiend named Mel, and we buddy read it together, and this is so good. Like, I had heard amazing things about this from people. I knew several people who like this was one of their favorite fantasy books, and I somehow was still like blown away by how incredible this was. For one thing, there's a lot of like things about it that I normally don't like, or I often don't like. Like, it's a very like military-based fantasy in some ways. There's a lot of flashbacks, there's a lot of like battle scenes. None of those are things I enjoy, but I was so captivated by this book. I love our main character. I love her sort of gradual realization that there are different kinds of strength. Our main character, Misaki, well, one of our main characters, she is expected to just be a housewife and a mother, but she has this past that is much more physical than that, much more like active. She was essentially an incredibly well-trained fighter, and she's not really expected to like talk about that or acknowledge that anymore. This is a fantasy book that is sort of incorporating some elements of Japanese history and culture, which I believe the author has that background as well. And it's a super interesting mix of like historical aspects, but also like modern technology, but in a way that doesn't clash at all. There's also some like government like cover-up elements. I think that was incredibly gripping. The like emotional investment in these characters and in this story, it was intense. It was so good though, and I am so impressed at the way that M.L. Wong could write some of these things in a way that did not feel cheap, because I think a lot of times authors use certain tropes or certain like plot developments as like a shortcut to, you know, emotional impact, and I don't feel like this book did that at all. I think the characterization was incredible. I think the themes and the discussions about war and peace and like what what makes something worth fighting for. I think all of that was really great. I also think this book has a great example of something I like to call retroactive character development for one of the other characters in the book, because I think that the shift in perspective that we get on them, it is significant, but I feel like it fits in so well with the story that it didn't feel jarring or forced at all. The relationships are so well done, like the writing itself, like, again, the fact that this book could keep me so engaged when like big chunks of this book are like fight scenes, incredible. I love this so much. I feel like I need to get better about talking about it because like there's just so much to discuss here, but yeah, I thought this was incredible. Absolutely understand why it is a lot of people's, like, one of their favorite fantasy books, and it obviously was my favorite for 2023. Okay, everybody, so those were the 6 favorite series or fantasy books that I read in 2023. Please comment down below, let me know if you have read any of these, what you thought of them. Like I said, I will link any relevant like videos or playlists or anything like that, and let me know a fantasy book that you loved that you read recently. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!